Well, it is Memorial Day weekend, and we're in central New York, and we've had a beautiful week, and we've had a great day, a long day, but a good day, and we're going to do some recording this evening, and then my friend Rick will go and edit it all and take out all the mistakes that I make, and hopefully we'll be able to wind up with something presentable to you all. Thank you for your thoughts, your prayers on behalf of what we're doing here. We are excited about regrouping and getting back into our facility. That is coming really soon, and so we're excited about getting back. That'll be a great thing. I'll throw out a challenge to you toward the end here, but let me just share with you something about some thoughts in the area of remembering things. Maybe it's me, but the older I get, the more difficult it is to recall things. Ooh, what is his name? Ooh, what's her name? And you have that awkward moment while you're in a grocery store and you're hoping you don't see them in the next aisle because their name just has not triggered in your mind. And sure enough, you go up the next aisle, what do you find? There they are, and they say hi to you, and you say hi to them again, and finally, by the time you get down so many aisles, you have to admit, I can't remember your name and what have you. You tell somebody about it, and what do they say? Guess what? It gets tougher as you go. Some of you know that. Sometimes I wonder sometime if my mind's kind of like an onion sack. It holds some pretty big stuff, but the small stuff, it seeps right through, and it just doesn't work real good. Well, the older I get, I think this is a pretty good representation of my recall. Onion sack memories. I don't know about you, but I'm right there. Hard to remember certain things. Certain things you don't want to forget. If you forget what time your plane leaves, you missed it. If you forget what time you're supposed to be there for the wedding, not good if you're the bride. If you're the groom, people just expect it. Man, they don't pay attention. The bride, oh my goodness, if she doesn't show up, everybody's wondering what in the world, And there's the old saying, you're going to be late for your funeral. Why? Because, I forgot. I didn't realize what time it was. I forgot tonight was the meeting, or today was this or that. Anymore, if you forget your doctor appointment, they tell me you have to pay for the appointment. I don't know how that all works out, but I have heard stories. Memories. Sometimes our memories they're not as sharp as they were when we were kids. Some people have a knack of remembering an awful lot of things. And they can tell the story to almost bring you back where it was live in front of you. Though it was 50 years ago. How in the world? Some people have that capability. Memorial weekend really has nothing to do with loss of memory. It's set aside here in America, as I understand it, to honor and respect those who paid the ultimate price so that we can enjoy what we enjoy. Many of them signed up, many of them were drafted in, but nonetheless, all of them put on a uniform, and they went, and with a willing heart, they said, the cause for which I am going to stand is worth the risk of my own life. And so they went and they served, and many of them lost their lives. And so, fittingly so, we in America proudly and respectfully on this weekend remember those who gave us what we have. They gave it to us at the expense of their own life. Pretty incredible. Pretty incredible. How do we remember? Today I was going down a road. Way out on a backcountry road sits an old cemetery. And in that old cemetery, when I say old, there's probably, I'm going to guess there may be 50 headstones. None of them are in the last 75 years, I'm going to guess. It's old. And yet there was one American flag there. As I drove by, I looked at it. There was one American flag. Somewhere down the road, somebody was tied into somebody, and they thought it proper to place an American flag beside the grave in that old graveyard. Went by another graveyard over on Graham Road, Graham Cemetery, loaded with flags. Memorial Weekend, loaded, just loaded. There'll be festivities in honor of those who gave their life. Memories. How do you mark memories? A guy by the name of Joshua in the Bible. I'm going to need for you to dig in your Bibles and open it up to the book of Joshua. Joshua was an old-timer that Moses had asked 12 guys to go spy out this land that God had given to the nation of Israel years before Moses was even on the scene. But Moses was the leader, and he wanted to have that land spied out that God had given to them in hopes that someday they would soon be there. Only God knew the timing. So he chose 12 men to go in and spy out the land, and many of you who are familiar with the Bible, you know the account. 12 men came back after spying out this promised land that God had promised to the Jewish nation, Abraham and his family, his nation. 2 of those guys came back with a report, hey, if God's with us, we can conquer all things. 10 came back of that group of 12. 10 came back, oh man, let me put it in my vernacular. Not a chance. Not even a chance. One of the 2 that came back and said, hey, with God, all things are possible, kind of an idea. He had that kind of a philosophy. His name was Joshua. But his name was Caleb. Caleb did great things too. Neither one of these guys were willing just to let life go by and to realize what all that nation of Israel had enjoyed and then just trash it and say, no, God won't. He won't help us do that. Joshua becomes Moses' next man. Moses off the scene. Joshua starts with God telling Joshua, you're going to be the leader. He's not a young man. He's got a military mindset. He's sharp. And Joshua is going to lead the nation of Israel into this promised land that he has already seen, that he came back with a good report. Hey, by the way, as the result of 10 men who had spent 40 days checking things out over there, 10 men came back with a kind of a, we can't do it. God said, well, then you won't. You sit idle for 40 years. Joshua and Caleb were ready to go. And when the time was right, Joshua was the guy. And so you read in Joshua. Now, look at those first accounts. So much activity. So easy to understand. Joshua's the leader. God says, hey, follow my instruction. Be obedient. Trust in me. Think it through. Keep your relationship sharp. Lead these people. We'll be successful in everything you do. Check it out in Joshua chapter 1. As that book unfolds, there are account after account after account after account of things that God had done. Let me tell you, in memory of various accounts, Joshua does some pretty incredible stuff. Joshua is ready to go into the promised land. Between where they were and where they needed to get to was the Jordan River. The banks were full. It was, at flood stage, so to speak. High season of water. God tells Joshua what to do. Joshua tells the people what needs to be done, and so they go do it. Oh my goodness, they put their feet, they're carrying the Ark of the Covenant. You need to read it for yourself. Joshua chapter 3, Joshua chapter 4, you'll read about these accounts of what God does. And so these leaders put their feet in the water. As soon as they put their feet in the water, one guy from each tribe, the water starts to back up. One guy from each tribe had a task. Now, there were those who were carrying the Ark of the Covenant. They were a different group. But as soon as they touched the water started to back up, and the nation of Israel was able to get across the Jordan River. All right, so we got God starting to do some pretty incredible things. Joshua, being the sharp guy that he was, said, I don't want generations to come to forget how big God was at a moment when we needed him. He told us what to do. Obedience did it. And that water stacked up way up the river. We walked across. So here's what Joshua did. He had one man per tribe, 12 tribes in Israel, grab a stone and put it on his shoulder and carry it out and set up an altar. They set up a memorial. What's this memorial all about? It's to help your children understand the activity of God and how important it is to keep your relationship with Him sharp and on track. How to show your allegiance and your loyalty to the God who is. Not to get veered this way or veered that way and follow after other gods that are out there. Rather to stay on track and how important it is. They will hear the story about how the Jordan River stacked up and the nation of Israel was able to get across. That's what this stone pile is all about. It's a memorial. It's a memorial. Joshua goes on and the people are just chomping at the bit because they have got into this promised land and God has told them, you are to inhabit this whole thing. I've laid it out for you. I want you to own it. There are people that are here, but we'll need to drive those out, but I will help you. We'll take care of that. You just be obedient. And so here's this military man who comes up with this wonderful idea to go on these various conquests, one to the south, one to the north, and to inhabit ultimately the land and then to divide it up between those 12 tribes. The promise that God made way back was going to be fulfilled, and Joshua was the guy who was going to be the leader during this fulfillment. There's all these various episodes in Joshua. They get across that Jordan River. They go through a few details to get themselves set up. You can read those. But then you get to this city called Jericho. Great big thick walls, Jericho, big city. No doubt Joshua's mind was rolling. Oh, how are we going to get this? How are we going to get this? How are we going to get this? God gives him specific instructions. Here's what you do. You march around that. You have people in certain rows, and you march around that every day, and you go through it, and you do it silently. And then you'll have to read it. Check it out. Jericho, chapter 6. No way would anybody have ever thought, nobody would have ever thought that that's the way to go about it. But that's what God told Joshua to do. And Joshua, in his obedience to God, did just exactly what he told him to do. They marched around that baby. And then when the time was right, the people shouted and they blew the trumpets. And when they shouted and when they blew the trumpets, boy, I got to tell you what happened. Down comes the walls. Now, there were some instructions. Don't go in there. Don't take anything for yourself. Anything that you take that is there, it goes into the storehouse of the Lord. There were specific instructions as to what to do. That's what I'm going to tell you. Here's Joshua, and these people are already seeing God do miracles in front of them. God is doing the unknown. So what does Joshua do? Joshua says, we cannot disobey God. As he helped us to wipe out Jericho, all the rest of this, these vineyards that you didn't plant, they're going to be yours. These wells that you did not dig, they're going to be yours. These cities that have been built are going to be yours. You don't have to do it. God's going to provide them for you. We just got to be obedient. We got to follow his way. The instruction was, don't take anything out of Jericho, and somebody did, and they hid it. His name was Achan. It's in Joshua chapter 7. You read about Achan. Unbeknownst to Joshua, somebody went into Jericho and they grabbed some of the goodies, some financial goodies, and they buried it in their tent. Joshua didn't know anything about it, nor did anybody else. But Achan knew it. According to chapter 7, things are going to fall apart because the next maneuver for the nation of Israel to go up to a smaller group and to wipe them out, they send just a package of guys up. Because it wasn't a real large task. They sent a package up, and guess what? That small package got hammered. 36 guys, Israelites, died. And Joshua is fit to be tied, my language. What in the world? God, what you doing? What? We're supposed to claim victory in everything that we do. And guess what happened? God says, there's sin in your camp. Joshua, figure it out. And so they pulled people together, and you read how they figured it out. And they broke it all down and broke it all down and broke it all down till they narrowed down. It came to this guy named Achan. Big clans, broke down to families, leadership. Here's Achan. Achan, what'd you do? He stole. Sin in the camp. Disobedient to God. Let me tell you. Do you remember the leaders of the 12 tribes and how they carried a stone and they made a stone pile after crossing that Jordan River and kind of acknowledging, hey, we're going to tell our kids, wow, this is what God did. This is phenomenal. Achan goes out under God's instruction to wipe out sin and the seriousness of disobedience to God, direct disobedience to God, willing direct disobedience to God, he gets stoned. Guess what? There's a stone pile. One stone pile was a celebration of God doing incredible things. Let me just tell you, a second stone pile, not so good. There's a stone pile, and so if parents are going to be fair, they take him to where Achan was. Here's a stone pile of a man who disobeyed God. And God said it'll cost him his life, and he got stoned to death. You say, oh, that's really heavy. No. God is a just God. He gave him some instruction. 2 stone piles, 2 mind joggers, 2 memorials. Life goes on. They go and they conquer and they win, and sometimes they win big, and sometimes God has to remind them that don't get ahead of yourself and don't forget me, and so he slows them down, and when they get out of line, he's got to get them back in line. They go through, and ultimately they inhabit the land. It gets all divided. Joshua's going to die when he's 110 years old. But before he dies, according to chapter 24 and verse number 15, he makes this profound statement. Here's what it is. Speaking to all the families of Israel, pulled them all together. They were at Shechem, gathering joint, gathering place. Pulls them all together and he says, look it, you have options when it comes to your loyalty, your allegiance, your service. You can be like others who even had your heritage line, who worshiped other gods, or you can serve the true and living God. He says, but I'm going to tell you what this leader is in his old age and shortly before nearing death, nearing earthly death. He says, I want to tell you something. When it comes to service, me and my house, we're going to serve the Lord. Choose you this day whom you're going to serve. But as for me and my house, we're going to serve the Lord. Boy, that's incredible. That's strong. So the rest of the people said, oh, us too. We do. Yeah, we're going to do it too. We're going to do it too. You know what Joshua told them to do? Joshua told them, here's a stone right here. We're going to make another memorial. You read it. Joshua 24. These stones have ears, so to speak. What an incredible idea. These stones are memorials to a commitment that you made. In 1986, I was serving maybe it was 1987, I'm not exactly sure. I was at a camp, I was speaking at a camp, and I was missing the love of my life, my now wife, Brenda. And I was just missing her. And I went to the craft lady and I said, hey, craft lady, I need to build something. I need to do something unique for my main squeeze. I just have got to do it. So she said, well, what are you thinking? You just want to send her a card or something? Nah, that's not creative. That's nice, man. She gave me this card, or showed me this card that had this bear on it, and the bear was kind of stenciled out, and I said, let me tear that card apart. What are you doing? So I tore that card apart, and then I put the bear right on this here flat rock that I went down and pulled out of the creek. And I put it on this stone, and then I kind of traced around this little thing and made a bear, and then I painted it. Now, you're not going to be able to see that very well, I don't think, but maybe you will. And if you can see it, let me tell you what it says up here. February 14th, Valentine's Day, 1986, on to forever. Brenda, my wife, lovely. There is, a godsend. That was our first date, February 14th, 1986, on to forever. She holds on to this rock. It's a mind jogger. It's a mind jogger to a promise that I made to her. What God brought together has stayed together, will stay together. By His grace, we're going to continue to keep Him in the center of our lives. And you know, this kind of stuff doesn't hurt. Stones. Cemeteries are loaded with stones. This time of the year, this weekend, beside the stones are markers. Here lies one who gave his life. And the flag beside the stone is a reminder. He gave his life for us. The stone is a reminder so that we could enjoy the freedoms we got. Wow, incredible. Let me wrap something up. I don't know where you stand. I don't know how many more truck bed things we'll ever do. But if these have been meaningful to you, if you have rethought where you stand with God, that's a good thing. Because the decision to accept the God that is, to accept what He has done for you in His love for you, to bring you toward Himself because He loved you, that's huge. That's huge. If these things have been used and you've rethought a little bit about God and you and life, and am I ready for death? Am I ready for the cemetery? Am I ready for a stone? If you have rethought that and said, my body will be laid here, where will my soul spend eternity? Let me tell you, God welcomes your soul to spend it in eternity with Him, not alienated from Him, not apart from Him. Doesn't force us, He welcomes us. I hope that you're on God's team. I hope you've trusted in what Christ has done for all of us. If you have, I hope there's a day where you made a stone. If today is the day where you just need to talk to God and say, I understand what you did for me. I understand that I needed it. And I understand that your love for me put your Son on a cross. And His willingness to die was to pay for the penalty of my sin. And by believing on what He did on that cross, I can have an eternity with you. If you've never made that decision, if you've never talked to God about that, boy, do it. And when you do, go grab a stone and get a Sharpie and write down, here's the date, that I understood that Jesus Christ died for me personally. God in His love. Hey, it's been fun. If you got any questions about where your eternal soul will spend, you got to touch base with us. And if you have already made a decision sometime in your life, I hope you revisit it from time to time. I hope you have some kind of a mind jar that takes you back to that day when you understood what God in His love did for you. That day that changed your destiny, your eternal destiny. Hey, this has been fun. Make contact with us whenever you need to. We've appreciated it much. I want to say two things. Thanks to God for giving us the opportunity, even through this whole COVID-19, kind of giving us a unique opportunity to minister to people that are far away from here, as well as to those that are nearby. And then I want to thank Rick again. I like thanking Rick because he does such a good job editing. He makes what doesn't sound too good, he makes it sound better. We have helicopters that fly over and birds that fly in and wasps that fly by, and we have microphones that make weird sounds, but Rick fixes all that stuff. So I appreciate Rick for what he's doing. Hey, God bless you. This is the longest one of them all. I hope it's the best. Go to Joshua, read Joshua. Catch that book. It's not hard, and it's filled with all kinds of activity that God did with man, that you and I can appreciate the God who is for what He's done. Helps us to do some introspection in our own life. Hey, as my old friend said, God bless you real good until we meet again. So long.